All right, welcome back everyone. I'm Nick, this is Swiftful Thinking, and yes, we are on video number 4 or 5 of this series, and that means you guys have listened to that intro music a bunch of times by now. So I'm very curious, leave a comment below. Has that music been growing on you? Are you liking it more? Or is it just as bad as the first time you heard it? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. But this video is a fun little one. We're gonna add basically a menu into our app. So when we click that top bar on the top of our map, it's gonna pop down with a list of all of the locations in our app. So that's what we're gonna do in this video, and then we're gonna add the animation so that we can actually open and close that list. All right, welcome back everyone. We are in our locations view here. We have our locations view set up. It's pretty much just a map right now. And that's all we have on the screen. So let's start adding a little bit more to this view here. So on top of this map, we're gonna have basically it looks kind of like a search bar on the top here. So in front of the map in the Z stack, let's create a V stack. And let's do maybe spacing of 0 and then open the brackets. And let's start very simply, let's put a spacer at the bottom just to push everything to the top. Let's add a text and let's put in the current name and city of the current location on the map. So we're going to call vm.mapLocation that we set up in the last video .name. So we can see it says Coliseum up here, and then I also want to add, let's do plus vm.mapLocation .city name. So we got Coliseum, Rome, and now let's just put a little comma and a space in between those two. So I'll put another plus here. Let's make another string, and let's do comma and a space. So Coliseum, comma, Rome. Let's give this a font of maybe Title 2. Let's give this a font weight of maybe black. That looks good. Let's give this a foreground color of primary. That's the default color. Let's give this a frame with a height of 55 and a frame with a max width of infinity. Looking good. Let's wrap this text in a VStack. So I'm going to hold the command button and click on this word text, embed it in a VStack. And we're going to update this VStack in a second, but for right now on the whole VStack, let's give it a background. And let's use one of those new materials in iOS 15. So I'm going to use the thick material this time. Let's give this a corner radius of 10. That'll be the corner radius we use in this app. And let's give it a shadow with color. And I'm going to use color.black.opacity of 0.3. And let's make it a little bigger than normal. So radius we'll do 20. X, so we'll offset it 0, so it's right in the center, and then Y will go down 15 points. So we have a little bit of shadow that you guys can see coming in at the bottom of this bar. And then on the whole thing, let's just add some padding. All right, this is looking good. Let's take this code here. So I'm not going to take the padding because we might want to change that later, but I'm just going to take this VStack, cut it, come down and create an extension for locations view. Open the brackets. I'm just creating an extension is nothing more than just a continuation of the current struct. So all the code that's in this struct is for the locations view. And then if we create an extension for locations view, it's just adding more code. It's just in a separate spot in the file. So we can put extensions in different files and still have them be part of this struct here. I'm doing this just because I want to keep the body super readable. I want to keep this as neat and organized as possible in our app. If you've been building SwiftUI for some time now, you've probably run into points where the body gets really, really long, and then it's maybe hard to understand, hard to read, and that gets to be chaos in SwiftUI. So a really good habit is to just keep these bodies super short and condensed and highly readable. So what we're going to do here is in this extension, we're going to create a private variable and call it header. It'll be of type SomeView. So I'm doing SomeView because it doesn't matter what type of view it is, as long as whatever we add in this code conforms to the view protocol. So pretty much anything that goes onto the screen in SwiftUI conforms to view protocol. So VStacks, HStacks, those are all part of the view protocol. So I'm going to paste in our header down here. And then I'm just going to take this word header and put that on the screen up here. And I'll give just that the padding. Click resume one more time. So now we should get our header up here. And I'll reload the canvas one more time just to make sure it is still connected. So it looks the exact same, except the body now is nice and readable. We just have our header here. So let's scroll down to our header. And then on this header, I want to add a button on the left side. So let's actually add it on this text here, right? So the frame for this text, if I give it a background of color.red, we can see the frame goes all the way to the edge here. So I'm going to just add a .overlay. And let's see, overlays should have alignment and content. So the alignment of this overlay will be .leading, so the left side of the overlay, and then we'll get content, of course. And in here, I'm just going to put a button. So I'll do an image for the button, and we're going to do system name arrow.down. We can see it here. Let's make it a little bigger by giving it a font of headline. Let's give it a foreground color of primary as well, just to make sure that it is still this black color. And let's also give it maybe some padding just to push it out from the edge a little bit. And that looks pretty good to me. Let's get rid of the red. Just did that for a second. So it should be nice white. All right, that looks pretty good. And now when we are clicked on this, I want a menu to pop down from this section here. So basically in this VStack, if we have more items here, so I'll just put text that says hello. If I put a bunch of items in here, we can see that it extends this search bar from the top, right? So that's exactly what we want. All we want to do is basically add items and delete items inside this VStack. So if we are looking at the menu, we should have a whole bunch of items appearing here, and it'll look kind of like this. And if we have the menu closed, it'll look kind of like this. All right, so let's create that menu quickly. I'm going to do that in its own view. So I'm going to right-click on the views here, create a new file. It'll be a SwiftUI view, and let's call this locations list view. Click create, and let's click resume on the canvas here. Now we know we're going to be in that same environment, so we're going to give this an environment object as well, and it will be a locations view model. So let's pull the view model out of the environment. We'll do @environment, environment object. The auto completion is not working. Let's do private var VM, and it will be of type locations view model. This is going to be a super simple screen, similar to what we did like 2 videos back. Let's just create a list, and we'll open the brackets. Let's do for each, open the parentheses. Let's use the first one with for identifiable data. So we'll do vm.locations. This, remember, is all the locations in our app, and we'll click enter here. And now we need to create what each of these rows are going to look like. So let's create an H stack, open the brackets. On the left side, let's put an image. So inside our location, so if we look at the location, there's an array of image names. So for the preview image for each location, we're just going to use the first item inside this array. So we'll go back and we'll say if let image name equals, and we need to reference that location. So we could do the $0 for this new inherited completion here to reference each location that we're looping on. But I like it better to just type in location in. So this is the iOS 14 completion version. Basically, we're looping on each location, and then we can reference the location dot image, image names dot first. And then we'll open the brackets. So if we can get that first image name, let's then just put the image on the screen. So we'll do an image with the image name. If I click resume, we should get some super big images. All right, looking good. This is the first step. If you press play, you should see at least all of the images pulling through. We should be able to swipe through them. These are our 5 locations. Of course, these are way too big for our app, so let's make them resizable. Let's make them scaled to fill, and then let's give them a frame of maybe 45 by 45, and we don't need any alignment. Lastly, let's do a corner radius of 10. So we get these nice little icons coming in here on the left side. And then on the right of those, we're going to add a VStack with a text that is going to be the location.name, and then another text with the location.city name. These are looking good. We can see that they're not lined up. That's because VStacks by default have center alignment. So let's give the alignment leading, push it to the left side. On the name, let's make it font headline, make it a little bigger, stand out. On the city name, we'll do font maybe sub headline. And then lastly, if I add on the VStack, if I add a quick background, let's do color.red. We can see that they are all different sizes. So this could lead to some kind of weird layout issues if all of these rows are maybe different sizes, and maybe it's in a location in our app where some of these rows get pushed in and get condensed. So what I'm going to do is just very simply add a dot frame here with a max width of infinity to make it as big as possible. And then when we're in this big frame here that's red, let's just create alignment of leading. So push it to the left side of that red frame. So now they're all the exact same width. And I'll delete our red here. All right, our list is looking good. And as I mentioned a little while ago, we want to keep these bodies as nice and neat and organized as possible. So what we're going to do is create another extension down here of locations list view. Open the brackets. And then we're going to put this H stack in that extension. And the only problem we're going to have is that this H stack needs a reference to a specific location, right? So we're getting the location from this for each. So when we create it down here, we actually need to create a function that accepts a location. So I will cut this. And then down here, we're going to create a private func. Let's call it list row view, open close parentheses, open brackets. And then we'll paste this in here. Now we have two issues quickly. That firstly, we need a location in this function. So we're going to pass in a location of type location. And we should get, these are now whited out again. And secondly, it says the result of this is not doing anything. And that's because this function is going to execute this code, but it doesn't know to actually put and return this view for the screen. So what we're going to actually do is just return some view, very simply. And now we're going to take the list row view and just put that up here. And then we'll pass in our location. Click resume and it should work. All right, before we move forward, let's put this on the screen. So I'm going to go to our locations view. This is back where we have our header. And then in here, we're going to put a locations list view, open close parentheses. So we can see what it looks like. So it looks decent, but I don't like this kind of grouped padding that it has here. So let's change the style of that. So I'm going to actually just, you guys can't really see it here. Hold on. So at the bottom here, there's a little pin. I'm going to click this pin so this canvas stays put as I switch between files. So I'm going to go to the locations list view that we were just working in, and we still have the same preview here. And now on this entire list, let's just give it a list style of plain list style. And now if I click resume on the canvas, we should see a slightly different list style that I think will look more natural with our layout here. And it took a second to load. I'm not really sure why, but all right. So this looks a little bit better. We have all of our items without that weird spacing on the side. And now let's work on this a bit. All right, on each of these rows, let's give it padding of maybe vertical. Let's do 4, make it look a little bit bigger. And then you guys can see that the background on these list rows is actually white, and that's because list rows have a background by default. So we can change that with the list row background. I'll do color.red for a second just to show you guys so that just the list rows have this background, but really we want to use the default background that we get here. So what we're going to do is just color.clear. And now we can use the default background that was already there. And I think it looks much more natural. And we want a little bit of logic here for showing and displaying this list. And then when we click on these buttons. So firstly, when do we want to show this list? So in our view model, let's jump to it quickly. Let's create, so let's make a comment here. This is the current region on map. And then below here, let's create another item, another variable here, and this will be show list of locations. So we'll do an @published var, and we'll say show locations list of type bool. We'll set it equal to false to start. So when we are just starting our app, this list will not be displayed. And then when users click on that top bar, this list will turn to true, and then this will obviously display. So first, let's create a function to actually toggle this, because every time we want to toggle it, we want to do it with the same exact animation. So down here, let's create a private func. Let's call it toggle locations list. We'll open close parentheses, open the brackets, and then with animation, of course, the animation will do ease in out because that looks super natural. Open the brackets, and all we want to do is just set the value of show locations list equal to the opposite value. So I'll do the exclamation point, so not show locations list. So if it's true, we're going to set it equal to not true or false. Now all we need to do is toggle this, and then our locations list will toggle with animation, which is the key here. That's why we're creating this function, because I want to use this animation every time we toggle the list. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, so show locations list, we can now reference this in our view. Let's jump back to our locations view, and where we have our header with this list, so we're going to say if vm.showLocationsList. So if it's true, let's put the locations list view on the screen. If it's not true, obviously we're not going to have the list at all. So if I click resume right now, by default it should be starting as false, so we should not see the list by default. Looks good. All right, now when I click on this top section here, and I could do it just on this image, but I want to do it on this entire thing. So if I click anywhere on this entire search bar thing, I want to show the list. So what I'm going to do is take this text here with the location name and the image, cut it. Let's just make a button, open the parentheses, and we're going to use the action and label. Now the action, when we click on this button, is going to be the vm.toggle list view. And clearly it's not showing here. So let's go back to our view model quick. Toggle locations list, sorry, and it should not be private because we are referencing it from our view. So this will be a public function, toggle locations list. So going back, our button is going to be vm.toggle locations list, and our label, I'll click enter and then paste in this title here. So I'll click resume. All right, so now in the preview here, let's click play on the preview here. And I'm going to Command-Shift-K to clean and rebuild. Let's click resume on the canvas one more time. If I click play, we should be able to toggle and display the actual list, which looks awesome to me. So you guys should be at this point where we get this list. A couple things I want to point out. So this arrow I want to change if the list is displayed or not. So the arrow is right here. So just on the image, not on the entire text here, just on this image, let's do a dot rotation effect. Let's do an angle with degrees. And then in here we're going to check if vm.showLocationList. So if it's showing location list, let's rotate it 180 degrees, otherwise 0. So now we get this nice animation on the arrow if we are showing the actual list, which looks pretty good to me. Last thing I want to do before we wrap up this video is if we click on one of these, I want to actually update the map to go to that location, and I want to update this title here to change to whatever location that we clicked on. So let's go to where we click on these, and that's going to be in our list. We're going to our locations list view. And so for each, we just have the row right now, but let's actually add a button. So each row will be its own button with action and label. I'll click enter. We don't have an action yet, but the label will be our list row view. And then I will just put the padding and the list row background onto the entire button here. Click resume, make sure we're still good. And now all we need is an action when we click on one of these rows. So let's go back into our view model one more time. And let's see here. So we have toggle locations list. Let's also create another func called show next location. Why not? And when we call show next location, obviously we need to pass in that next location. So we'll do location of type location. And then there is two things that we need to do. Firstly, we want to update the location. So obviously we need to update the map region, but we're not going to call that directly because we know from the code we added before, when we update the map location, if we just update this variable, it's going to call update map region and it will automatically update the map. So all we need to do is change this map location here. So coming down here, so with animation, and let's do .ease in out again. So two things we're going to do. Firstly, we're going to set the map location equal to the location. And then we also want to close the notifications list. So we could toggle the notifications list, but I think it'll be a little safer in this instance to just set the show locations list equal to false. So however we select the next location, whether it's from the list, whether it's from somewhere else in our app, we're always just going to close the locations list at that time. So now we just need to call show next location from our code, from our view, and it should update the map and close the list at the same time. So going back to our locations list view, let's call vm.showNextLocation and we'll pass in our location. Click resume. So we have our toggle going on, and then if I click on the Trevi fountain, we should see that the screen moved, the title updated a little bit. Let's go to a totally different, let's go to Paris, Eiffel Tower. So the map moved, the Eiffel Tower Paris updated at the top here, and this is looking good. Final thing I'm going to do before we finish this up is, I don't like this little animation. I like how the map's animating. I don't like how the title is animating because it's got this weird little push in from the left side here. And that time it came from the right side. So let's just get rid of the animation on this title bar here. So going back to the locations view, back to this text. And so this text, we basically want to just override it so it doesn't have any animation. So in here, let's add a .animation. And we're going to use this new iOS 15 completion here with animation. So what animation do we want this text to actually have? And that is .none. And then we need to add a value. So basically, when this value changes, if that value changes with animation, this animation type will override it. So if we have none and whatever is in here changes, if this changes with spring animation, this text now will still change with no animation because we're overriding it here. So we need to add something that conforms to Equatable. So what we're referencing here is the vm.map location. So if the map location changes, then we're going to change the name. And if the map location is changing with animation, we then want to obviously not do it with animation here. So we're going to take the vm.map location and make that our value. But the problem we're going to get is that the map location right now does not conform to Equatable. Remember, this needs to be Equatable, and we're passing in a map location, which is telling us is not Equatable. So let's go into our location, which is back here. Right now, we're only conforming to identifiable. And that means each location will have a specific unique ID. That's this one. And now it's telling us to conform to Equatable. So we'll also conform to Equatable. Equatable means if we have two different locations in our code, how does the compiler differentiate? How can we set one location equal to another location? So the compiler is going to want to know, are these two locations equal or are they not equal? So are they the same thing? Or are they different things? And that's very, very similar to what identifiable is, right? Because identifiable means each location will have a specific ID. So for our Equatable, we can basically just check if two locations have the same ID, well then they're probably the same location. It's asking us to define this purposely because we could have situations where maybe two items have the same ID but have different descriptions. That's theoretically possible. But in our app right now, all we care about is the name and the city name, because we know as a developer that we're never going to have duplicates with the same name and city name. If you were worried about something like that, you could obviously include all of this logic inside to make a very specific ID or something like that. You could even make a hash value to make it hashable, which we'll get into in the future. But right now we just want to conform to Equatable. So let's add the protocol stubs. And it's this simple little function here, which I will cut and put it at the bottom. And let's make a comment here. This is Equatable. And this function looks weird, but it's very simple. If we have two locations, so the left-hand side and the right-hand side, if we have this location and then we have this location, what logic should we use to determine if these two locations are the exact same location? And all we're going to do is check if they have the same ID. So we'll say left-hand side dot ID is equal to right-hand side dot ID. So if two locations have the same ID, then they are the same location. It's that simple. That's the Boolean we're returning here. So now we can go back to our code. This error should go away. I will Command-Shift-K to clean the build folder. Let's click resume one more time. Click play on this little simulator here on the little canvas. And now if we change the location, the text at the top is not animating between the items. So it's just showing the actual next name, which I think is looking really cool. All right, guys, longer video, but we got a lot done in this one, to be honest. We have our menu coming through, and we have our map actually updating to the next location. A lot more good stuff to come in the next couple videos. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I am Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and I'll see you in the next video.